I wasn't even supposed to go to Alaska. It was supposed to be a cheap getaway, just a quiet week in the mountains, a change of pace. My best friend Jamie had found the listing, a sleek, modern-looking cabin surrounded by snowy pine trees, far enough from the nearest town that the listing boasted complete and utter silence. She'd gotten an email a few weeks before with a promo code offering a free stay. Jamie travels for work a lot, so deals like this aren't totally uncommon for her. Still, something about the whole thing felt too good to be true. It was a 1-week rental, fully paid. The photos were gorgeous, glass walls that looked out over a frozen lake, a wood-burning stove, vaulted ceilings, a Scandinavian minimalist vibe. Jamie was giddy about it, and I just wanted an excuse to unplug for a while. I wish I could say I had a bad feeling, but I didn't. Not then. Our flight was long. I remember staring out the tiny window as we flew over endless expanses of snow and forest. The closer we got to our destination, the more remote it felt. Civilization started to thin out beneath us, until finally the airport was little more than a single building surrounded by trees. The car rental lot was a patch of frozen gravel. We climbed into our SUV and started the drive into the mountains. The road was long, winding, and almost entirely deserted. The radio cut out after the first hour. My phone had already lost signal. Jamie didn't seem to mind. She just laughed, rolled down the window, and let the freezing air hit her face. "Come on," she said. "We never get this kind of silence in the city." It was true. There was no traffic, no distant sirens, not even birdsong, just wind and the faint crunch of tires over ice. We arrived just before sunset. The sky was a deep, heavy blue, streaked with orange at the edges. The cabin was tucked between two slopes, with towering evergreens guarding its flanks. Snow blanketed everything. I remember thinking how perfect it all looked. Too perfect. Like a model home in some overpriced catalog. The front door was already unlocked. Jamie pushed it open without hesitation. They probably just left it open for us, friendly mountain folks. Inside, it was warm and bright. The place looked exactly like the pictures, maybe even better. The windows spanned the entire northern wall, giving us a panoramic view of the frozen lake beyond the trees. The furniture was soft and modern, all earth tones and soft blankets. A bottle of red wine waited on the table with a welcome note. "Enjoy your stay." There were no names, no host signature, no instructions. We unpacked, took a few selfies, opened the wine. For a little while, it felt like a vacation. Jamie put on music from her downloaded playlist. I curled up by the window and watched the light fade across the snow. The first night passed without incident. We were too tired to notice anything off. The first thing I noticed the next morning was the silence. Not just the usual kind you get in remote areas, but something heavier, thicker, like the world had been muffled. I stepped out onto the porch and saw no movement at all. Not in the trees, not on the lake. No tracks in the snow, not even animal ones. It was like everything had gone still. Jamie joined me with a steaming mug in her hands. She didn't seem fazed. "This is what we came for, right?" she said. I nodded, but I remember feeling observed. Not watched exactly, just aware that we weren't as alone as we thought we were. We went into town that day. It was about a 40-minute drive down the mountain, through winding roads that were only half plowed. The town itself was tiny, mostly just one main street lined with shops and diners. We stocked up on groceries, chatted briefly with a woman at the general store. She was polite, but not warm. When Jamie mentioned the cabin, the woman gave us a long look. "What cabin?" Jamie pulled up the listing on her phone, but without a signal, nothing loaded. She just waved it off. "It's a rental near Halberd Lake. A-frame, kinda modern." The woman's eyes narrowed slightly. I don't know any cabins out there. Nothing modern, anyway. It was probably nothing. Small town folks aren't always aware of new developments, we figured. Still, something about her tone stayed with me the whole drive back. That night, something woke me. A sound, not loud, just a light creaking, like a floorboard being pressed down slowly. The bedroom was dark. My side of the bed faced the hallway, and I could just make out the faint outline of the door, slightly ajar. I held my breath. Nothing. Just stillness. Then I heard it again. Creak. A pause. Then a softer sound. Like a breath. I sat up, straining my ears. Jamie shifted beside me. You up? I nodded, though she probably couldn't see. Did you hear that? What? Sounded like someone in the hall. She sat up too. Maybe the wind? Or the wood settling? I wanted to believe that, but I didn't. The hallway didn't have any vents, and we hadn't used the stove yet. The place was warm and still. Jamie got up and walked out into the hall. I followed a few steps behind. The hallway stretched toward the back of the cabin, ending at the utility room and the locked cellar door. Everything looked the same. Nothing was out of place, except the door to the cellar was open a crack. We stared at it for a long time. Neither of us moved. Jamie was the first to speak. We didn't open that, did we? I shook my head. I was sure of it. She stepped forward, reached for the handle, and pushed it open. The hinges groaned. The cellar was pitch black. There were stairs leading down, but no light switch that we could see. Just the void below, waiting. Jamie leaned in slightly. Then she frowned. It smells weird. I stepped beside her. She was right. There was a smell rising up from below, metallic and musty, like rusted pipes and mold. Not strong, but enough to make your nose wrinkle. Should we go down? I asked. Jamie considered. Nah, let's just shut it. We can ask the host tomorrow. She closed the door, turned the lock, and we went back to bed. But I didn't sleep well. The sound came again later that night. Only once. But this time it came from the ceiling, like someone walking slowly across the roof. The cabin, as far as we knew, had only one level, and no attic. The next morning felt different. Not in a dramatic way. Not like we woke up to blood on the walls or something from a horror movie. But there was a stillness to everything. A silence too complete. It was like the cabin was holding its breath. Or maybe it was just me. Jamie didn't seem bothered. She made coffee, patted around in thick socks, and put on the same playlist as the day before. But she looked tired. Her face was a little pale, the bags under her eyes darker than usual. When I asked if she slept okay, she shrugged it off and said the bed was too soft. The cellar door was still locked, but now the lock looked different. Scratched, like someone had tried to pick at it with something metal. Jamie noticed it too, but neither of us said anything right away. I think we were both trying not to be the one to admit something was off. That day, we stayed close to the cabin. The temperature had dropped overnight, and the wind had picked up. The trees creaked outside, groaning under their own weight. We bundled up and went for a short walk down the trail that led toward the lake, but everything felt brittle. Even the snow under our boots made sharp, dry cracks instead of the soft crunch we were used to. Jamie was quieter than usual. She kept glancing back at the cabin like she expected to see someone watching us from the windows. Once or twice, I caught her scanning the tree line too, eyes narrowed. When I finally asked her what was wrong, she just shook her head. Nothing. Just didn't sleep well. It's more than that. Come on. She hesitated, then said, I thought I heard whispering last night. I blinked. Where? I don't know. The ceiling. It was faint, but it was there. We stood in silence, letting the wind fill the space. I tried to come up with a reasonable explanation, but nothing really fit. "Let's check the roof later," I said. "Maybe something's up there. Animals or vents or... I don't know." Jamie just nodded, but I could tell she didn't believe it. Back inside, the warmth of the cabin felt less comforting than before. The windows, which had looked so beautiful the day we arrived, now felt like too much exposure, like something could be watching us from the outside, shielded by the trees and the glare of the snow. We tried to distract ourselves, made dinner, played cards, pretended things were normal. But as night crept in, we both grew quieter. Jamie started fiddling with the furniture in the living room, moving things a few inches this way or that. At one point, she rolled up the rug. That's when we saw it. A seam in the floorboards, perfectly rectangular, about 3 feet wide. A trapdoor. It was flush with the rest of the floor and painted the same muted gray as the boards around it. If Jamie hadn't moved the rug, we never would have seen it. There was no handle, just a thin groove where your fingers could fit. Jamie stared at it. That wasn't there before. I knelt down beside it, ran my fingers along the edge. We didn't notice it. That's all. But I didn't believe that. We didn't open it that night. We sat on the couch, tried to watch something on Jamie's laptop, but the battery was low and she couldn't charge it. The outlet near the couch was dead. That was new too. I wanted to write it all off as coincidence. Just old cabin quirks. But it was getting harder to keep doing that. That night, I woke up to movement. Not sound, not footsteps. Just a shift in the air, like something had changed around me. The room was pitch dark. Jamie's bed was on the far side, and for a second I thought she was still asleep. But then I saw her silhouette sitting upright, just staring at the wall. "Jamie?" She didn't answer. "Hey, you okay?" Still nothing. I sat up. The room was cold, way colder than it had been earlier. "Jamie." She finally turned her head. Her eyes were wide, unfocused. "There's someone under the floor." My heart dropped. "What?" She didn't answer, just laid back down and turned away. I stayed awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, listening. Nothing. The next morning, Jamie barely spoke. She looked pale and restless, like someone coming down from a fever. I made breakfast, forced her to eat something, and tried to lighten the mood, but she barely reacted, just kept glancing at the floor. Eventually, I gave in. I pulled back the rug and knelt beside the trapdoor again. "Let's just look. Maybe it's nothing." Jamie stood behind me, arms crossed tight over her chest. It took some effort to pry it open. The wood resisted like it had swollen from moisture, but eventually it gave. A wave of cold air rushed up into the room. Below us was a narrow wooden shaft, maybe 4 feet deep, with a tunnel leading away into darkness. The walls were raw timber, old and dry. The air smelled of dust, bleach, and something metallic, like old tools or blood. Jamie stepped back. "We should close it." "Just a quick look." I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and shone it into the tunnel. It went on farther than the light could reach, too narrow to stand in. You'd have to crawl. There were scratches on the floorboards, long parallel marks, like someone had dragged their fingers through the wood. Some of them were stained dark. Jamie started breathing faster. I reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "We need to leave." "We can go. Today. Right now if you want." She nodded, but didn't move. We packed in silence, threw our things into bags, didn't even bother folding. I shut the trapdoor and pushed the rug back into place. Jamie locked herself in the bathroom for a few minutes. I heard her crying, but didn't know what to say. When she came out, she looked hollow, like something had been taken out of her. We loaded the car and got ready to go, but the engine wouldn't start. Battery was dead. I tried everything. jumped it with the power pack from the emergency kit, checked the cables. Nothing worked. Jamie was pacing. Her eyes kept flicking back to the cabin. "We'll walk," I said. "Town's only a few hours down the road. We can do it." But it had started snowing again. Heavily. Visibility dropped within minutes. The wind howled through the trees, loud enough to drown out our voices. We went back inside. There was no other choice. That night, Jamie locked the bedroom door and pushed the dresser in front of it. She didn't explain. She didn't have to. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, counting the seconds between each creak in the walls. Somewhere deep in the cabin, something scraped against wood. Like nails. Like someone trying to crawl their way out. Or in. The next morning, Jamie was gone. Not just out for a walk or standing in the next room. She was gone in a way that made the air feel heavier. In a way that made the cabin seem too big. Her boots were still by the door. Her coat was hanging where she'd left it. Phone, wallet, keys, everything was still in the bedroom. Her bed, though, was cold. At first, I told myself she had to be nearby. Maybe she went out back to get fresh air or walked a little ways down the path to clear her head. But I knew that wasn't true. The wind was howling outside, the kind of sharp cold that cuts straight through your skin. No one just steps out into that barefoot and without a jacket. I called her name until my throat hurt. Ran outside, circled the entire cabin twice. No footprints in the snow. None. Just the same smooth white as before. I stood on the porch and screamed her name until the silence swallowed it. Back inside, I paced the hallway, opening doors that had no reason to be closed, checking closets I knew were empty. Every room seemed a little dimmer than before, like the cabin was shrinking inward, drawing all the light into itself. I stopped in the living room. The rug had been pulled back again. The trapdoor was open. The sight of it sent a slow, creeping chill up my spine that had nothing to do with the weather. The phone was in my pocket, but I already knew there would be no signal. I tried anyway. 3 dots in the corner of the screen, then nothing. I tried to call 911. No ring, no dial tone, nothing but dead air. I looked down into the trapdoor again. The tunnel was just as narrow and claustrophobic as before, but this time, it looked darker. Like the shadows had grown. I didn't want to go in. Every part of me screamed not to. But what choice did I have? I grabbed my flashlight and a jacket, tied one of the wool scarves around my mouth and nose. The air in the tunnel smelled worse than before, moldy and metallic, laced with something sweet and rotten. I dropped down to my knees and slid inside. The crawl space was barely high enough for me to move. My elbows scraped the wooden walls. Bits of insulation hung down like cobwebs. My flashlight flickered, then steadied, casting warped shadows on the splintered boards. I don't know how long I crawled. The passage twisted left, then right, then dipped slightly. After a while, it opened into a low chamber, just enough space to sit up. A wooden beam ran across the ceiling, sagging under its own weight. There were marks on the walls, deep gouges. I thought they might have been from tools at first, but they were uneven, jagged, like something had clawed at the wood. And there were stains, brown and dried, old, soaked deep into the floorboards. The smell was overwhelming in here, and I had to press the scarf tighter around my face to keep from gagging. I wanted to turn back, but then I saw something in the far corner, a scrap of fabric, a flannel shirt, the same one Jamie had been wearing the day before. I reached for it. It was damp, sticky. Next to it was a footprint, small, bare, pressed into the grime. I kept going. The passage narrowed again and sloped downward. It felt like I was descending beneath the cabin entirely. I lost all sense of direction. It could have been minutes or hours. My phone clock was useless. The battery was draining fast, even though I hadn't touched it. Eventually, the tunnel widened again and ended in a set of old stone steps. The walls were different now, rougher, made of packed earth and ancient beams. Somewhere above me, the wind howled like it was miles away. I started down the stairs. At the bottom was another door, heavy wood, reinforced with iron bands. It looked like something pulled out of a medieval castle. I pushed it open. Beyond it was a long hallway, lined with faded wallpaper, peeling at the corners. Yellow stains bloomed across the surface like water damage. It looked like a hotel corridor, the kind you see in old black and white movies, a place trapped out of time. I walked slowly, past doors on either side. Some were cracked open, some shut tight. One had been smashed in, the frame hanging askew. Inside were broken pieces of furniture, overturned drawers, torn clothing. On the far wall, someone had scrawled in something dark, "Don't follow them." I kept going. My breath echoed in my ears. The hallway seemed to stretch forever. Then, just when I thought I couldn't take another step, I saw a light at the end. Not daylight, not electric, candlelight. A room stood open, glowing with a soft amber hue. Inside were dozens of candles arranged on shelves, casting shadows across faded portraits and dusty armchairs. A record player spun in the corner, but no sound came from it. In the middle of the room stood a figure. Jamie. She was facing away, standing still. Too still. Her shoulders were square, arms hanging by her sides. Jamie? She didn't move. I stepped closer. The wooden floor creaked under my weight. My flashlight beam caught her profile. Her skin was pale, too pale. Her eyes were open wide, unblinking. "Hey," I whispered. "It's me. You okay?" She turned, but not smoothly. Her head tilted first, then her body followed, like she had to remember how to move. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Then she smiled. It wasn't a Jamie smile. It was too wide, too many teeth. Her eyes didn't match it. I stepped back. What is this? She took one slow step forward. I raised the flashlight, but the beam flickered. Her skin looked wrong in the light, gray at the edges, papery, like something stretched thin over something else. Another step, then another. I ran. I bolted back into the hallway, slammed the door behind me, and sprinted down the corridor. Doors blurred past me. The air grew colder. I could hear footsteps now. More than one set, coming from behind, from in front, from above. The hallway wasn't empty anymore. Figures moved in the shadows, tall and hunched, some dragging themselves across the floor, others standing perfectly still until I got close, then turning toward me with those same two wide smiles. I turned a corner and ran straight into another door, shoved it open, found stairs. I didn't care where they went. I just ran. They spiraled up and up, rusted metal, echoing with each step. The light faded. I kept going. Eventually, the stairs ended at a narrow landing. A hatch was built into the ceiling. I pushed it with everything I had. It groaned, then gave way. I crawled out into a hallway. Carpeted, painted, familiar. It was the hallway outside our bedroom. The trapdoor in the floor behind me was gone. The clock on the wall said 2:47 a.m. Everything was silent. I stood there, panting, shaking, unsure if I was awake or dreaming. The bedroom door was closed. I opened it slowly. The room was empty. Jamie's bed was made. Her things were gone. Only mine remained. I backed out of the room, shut the door, went into the living room. The fire was burning in the stove. The windows looked out onto a perfect snowscape, peaceful, untouched. The rug was flat, the trapdoor sealed. The only sign that any of it had happened was a streak of dirt on my jacket sleeve, and the faint scent of something sweet and rotten lingering in the air. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I sat in the corner of the room, flashlight in hand, waiting to see if anything would move. Nothing did. Not that night. Not the next day. Jamie was gone, and I was alone. I should have left that morning. I knew it. I even packed my things, threw everything I could find into my duffel, and zipped it shut with trembling hands. But I didn't leave. Something about the cabin held me there. Not physically. The door wasn't locked. I even went as far as stepping outside, keys in hand, bag over my shoulder. The car was still dead, just like the day before. But I could have walked. Only, I didn't. I stood on the porch, staring at the trees, trying to imagine the trail leading back to the road, the town, civilization. But the forest didn't look the same. The trees felt closer than before, thicker. The snow was untouched again. No sign of the path we'd walked just 2 days ago, like the forest had closed in. I stayed. Maybe I was still hoping to find Jamie. Maybe I was afraid of what else was out there. The day passed slowly. I barely moved from the living room. I kept expecting the trap door to creak open, for Jamie to come stumbling out of the crawl space with some wild story, some terrible explanation. But she didn't. I tried calling again. My phone wouldn't even turn on. Around dusk, I started noticing things. The photo by the fireplace, the one I hadn't paid much attention to before, now showed something strange in the background. A tall figure, half obscured by trees. Blurred, unmistakable. It hadn't been there yesterday. The mugs in the kitchen were rearranged. A sweater I had folded on the couch was now on the floor, stretched out like someone had worn it. And then, there was the sound, soft at first. Scraping. A slow drag, like nails across wood. Then a thud, from under the floor. I sat frozen, clutching the flashlight I hadn't put down since I got back from the tunnel. My breath came in short bursts. The sound stopped. Silence returned, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was moving just beneath my feet. It was full dark outside when I finally opened the trapdoor again. I didn't want to. I had every reason not to. But the silence was worse than the sound. The waiting was worse than the knowing. I slid into the crawl space again. This time, I came prepared. A heavier flashlight, a small pocket knife, a scarf soaked in essential oils wrapped over my mouth and nose to block the smell. It didn't help much. I crawled, past the marks on the walls, past the stained floorboards, deeper. The tunnel branched, a fork I hadn't seen before. One path was familiar, the way I had come the first time. The other curved to the right, sloping downward, darker than the rest. I hesitated, then took the right. The air grew colder, more humid. The walls were damp to the touch. Every breath tasted of rot. After what felt like an eternity of crawling, the space opened up again. A circular chamber dug deep into the earth. Crumbling stone walls. Mold climbing in patches. The ground was soft, almost spongy beneath me. And in the center of the room stood a chair. Wooden. Old. The kind you might find in a farmhouse kitchen, except the arms had been reinforced with leather straps. Something had been restrained there. Recently, dark stains pooled beneath it. The air was thick with the scent of blood and mildew. I gagged, backing away, but my flashlight caught something else. A shoe. Jamie's, I thought. Half buried in the muck. I grabbed it, stuffed it into my jacket. As I turned to leave, I heard something. Breathing. Not mine. Slow, ragged inhales from somewhere behind me. I didn't look. I ran. I scrambled back into the tunnel, scraping my hands and knees against the damp stone, and turned down another side path in a blind panic. My flashlight wobbled with each breath. Shadows stretched across the walls. The tunnel spat me out into another hallway. This one was lined with concrete and wire mesh, like an old military bunker. I had no idea how far underground I was now. The air pressure had changed, My ears popped. I could feel the weight of the earth above me. Down the hallway, there were rooms. Most had no doors. One was filled with rusted hospital beds, another with filing cabinets, their contents burned and scattered. I passed a mirror hanging sideways from a wire. Its glass cracked in spiderweb patterns. My reflection didn't look quite right. In the last room, I found another door. Unlike the others, this one was clean, modern. Steel frame, keypad on the side. I reached for it. The door clicked. Unlocked. Inside was a stairwell, and at the bottom of the stairs, another hallway. This one didn't look like a bunker. It looked like a home. Warm lighting, floral wallpaper, carpeting that muffled my steps. It made no sense. I moved slowly, half convinced I was dreaming. Every door I passed was closed, except one. Inside, it was dim, dusty. The walls were lined with bookshelves and old photographs. A fire crackled in the hearth. A figure sat in the chair by the fire, back turned to me. I stepped inside. Jamie? The figure didn't move. I crept closer. The light from the fire caught the edge of her face. It was her, but wrong. Her skin sagged slightly, like clay that had started to melt. Her eyes were open and glassy. Her mouth twitched. "They're waiting," she whispered. I backed away. Her head turned slowly, bones cracking. "You shouldn't be here." I ran. Down the hallway, back to the stairwell. I took the steps 2 at a time. Behind me, the firelight dimmed. The warmth faded. The air turned cold again. At the top of the stairs, the door slammed shut behind me. I found myself in another tunnel. Smaller. Bare earth. No lights. I kept going, crawling again when the ceiling dipped low. Eventually, I saw a glimmer. Daylight. I scrambled toward it. The tunnel opened behind the cabin, just past the tree line. I tumbled out into the snow, gasping. The forest was quiet, still, untouched. My legs shook as I stood. My hands were bleeding. I stumbled back toward the cabin. The porch light was on. Inside, everything was exactly as I left it, except my bag was gone, and the shoe I'd stuffed into my jacket pocket was no longer there. I locked the door, shut every window, pushed furniture in front of the trap door, and sat, waiting for night to fall, wondering how long before they came for me too. It's been weeks since I got back. I'm still not sure how I made it home. I woke up on the floor of the cabin the morning after I sealed the trap door. The fire had gone out, and my limbs were stiff from the cold. The chair I'd propped against the entrance to the crawlspace was toppled. The rug had shifted, just slightly, like something had pressed against it from below. But the trap door was still closed. I didn't wait. I threw on my boots, grabbed what little I could find. My coat, my flashlight, a half-eaten protein bar, and walked. The car was still dead, its interior frozen solid. The trees felt thinner, the air sharper. I didn't stop to check behind me. I walked for hours. Eventually, I saw power lines, a snowplow in the distance, then a road. A man in a truck picked me up without asking too many questions. He was older, and his eyes flicked toward the rearview mirror a few times as I warmed my hands against the heater vents, but he didn't say anything about the state I was in. Just asked if I needed to get to a hospital. I told him no. I told him I just needed to get out of town. He drove me to the airport. I left Alaska that night. Didn't tell anyone where I'd been. Didn't file a police report. Didn't contact the Airbnb host. I didn't want anyone looking too closely at anything. The nightmares started almost immediately. I wake up sweating, heart racing, convinced I'm back in the tunnel. Sometimes I see her in the dark. Jamie. Sometimes it's not her. Sometimes it's something wearing her shape. Other times I see them, the others, crawling through the dark, silent and patient, like they've been there for a very long time. I moved cities, got a new phone, changed my email. But it didn't matter. 3 days ago, I got a new message. It came through on a new account. No sender name, no subject line, just a single sentence. You've earned a free week in one of our premium rentals. Congratulations. There was a link. Same layout. Same smiling stock photo faces. Same copy-paste text. But it wasn't the same cabin. This one was in Vermont. Another snowy forest. Another modern A-frame. Another promise of silence and solitude. I didn't click it. Didn't even open the link. But I haven't stopped thinking about it. And I'm not the only one. A few nights ago, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. When I listened, all I heard was breathing, ragged and slow, the kind I heard in the tunnel. Then a voice, so faint I had to turn the volume all the way up. They're not done. I can't prove any of this. I've looked. The cabin isn't on the site anymore. The listing is gone. The road I walked out on doesn't appear on any map. I tried to find the store where Jamie and I bought supplies. Nothing. Even her digital footprint is eroding. Social media profiles deactivated. Email accounts deleted. Photos disappearing from shared folders. Her family stopped returning my calls. At first, they thanked me for helping search. Then they got quiet. Her brother emailed once. Said he didn't want to talk about it anymore. Said it was best if everyone moved on. They won't find her. I know that now. Because she didn't get lost. She was taken. And whatever took her doesn't live in the cabin. It doesn't even live in the tunnel. It lives in the space underneath things. In the cracks. In the hollow places where no one looks. It waits there. Behind locked doors and false walls. It waits for someone to invite it in. Sometimes I wonder if Jamie's still down there. If that thing wearing her face was her, or just something that wanted me to think it was. Maybe she's one of them now. Maybe she never had a choice. I think about going back. I don't know why. I just can't shake the feeling that I left something unfinished. That maybe I should have followed her farther. That maybe the reason I'm still here is because it let me go. Or maybe because it's not done with me yet. Sometimes, at night, I hear sounds from beneath my floorboards. Faint ones, creaks, a whisper. Sometimes I dream about that elevator shaft, the endless drop, the open mouths in the dark. Sometimes I find things moved when I wake up. A drawer open, the door slightly ajar, my phone in a different place. And sometimes, just before I fall asleep, I feel a presence in the room, like someone watching, standing just outside the edge of my vision. One of these nights, I think they'll finally come for me. When they do, I won't fight. I just hope that when they take me back, it'll be quick. That I won't wake up in that chair, that I won't become one of them. But if I do, if something happens to me and I disappear like Jamie did, maybe someone will find this. Maybe someone will read it and believe me. Maybe that someone will stay away. I doubt it though, because that email didn't come just to me. I checked the source code, the hidden fields. It was part of a mass send, tens of thousands of recipients, all of them invited, all of them earned it, all of them chosen, and one by one, they'll go, to cabins, to lodges, to luxury stays that feel too good to be true, and something will be waiting for them, not to kill them, but to open the door and let something else in, something that never really leaves. I haven't opened my door in 3 days. I haven't turned off the lights. I keep hearing scratching, just like Jamie did. I think I finally understand what she meant. They're not just beneath us. They're underneath everything.